Welcome to Season 6 of the RAG podcast. Now, for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth, and this show has been around since early 2019. And every week, we are obsessed with finding out how the world's most successful and innovative recruitment agencies and their founders have got to where they are today. In Season 6, alongside the founder's story and the inside information of that business, I also want to focus on the reality of today's economy. There is so much noise about this inevitable recession that we find ourselves in right now. And where it's going to go, is it really having an impact on the recruitment sector? Are they seeing any change in job flow? Are they seeing any change in candidate control or activity? What is going on? I want to find out. So every single week, I want to forget the propaganda, forget the noise. I'm going to speak to a real life recruitment owner and find out what is going on in their business. I will bring it to you every single Wednesday from 12 o'clock across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to another episode. On this week's episode, I am joined by David Morgan. And David is the founder of a business called Morgan Law, which is interestingly not a law recruitment firm, although he agrees it probably should be with that kind of name. But they are a specific or specialist recruitment business in corporate functions across not-for-profit and public sector organizations. So a lot of central government, local government, etc. across the UK. 22 years in operation. David has built the business with his business partner. They're now at 35 heads. They did get up to 50, 60 in the past. And over those years, David has seen different recessions, multiple challenges, both professionally and personally, and has weathered a lot of issues and come out positive on the other side. He's now, in the last few years, changed his role to be more outwardly facing. He's no longer operationally involved like he used to be, like leading clients, teams, and recruiters, etc. He now looks outwardly facing. And in this episode, we talk a lot about the economy and what he's seeing and what he's learned from his recent outwardly facing activities. So people listening to this show will get a really honest guy, someone who can talk to you about what it was like setting up a recruitment firm in 2000 when you needed a fax machine and shit. It's quite hilarious how different life is now. And how he's reinvented himself through those years. And he 100% realizes he needs to change and the business needs to change with the times as opposed to just staying. So many recruitment people in our world, they just say, well, it worked for me. It'll always work for me. And that is not the truth. David reinvents himself. He puts a lot of time and effort into learning. And as I said, he's very, very hot on the current economy and what's happening. He gives a really good indication. So I recorded this earlier this week, and I'm pretty confident you're going to enjoy the show. So without further ado, David, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. I think it was about, what was it, the summer we spoke about this and getting recorded about August time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we were looking at potential economic challenges ahead, and I think you were looking at putting together the series to help people along, or with some sort of sage and wisdom about how to face headwinds and what to do with headwinds coming out of a pandemic, which I think has been very useful for people to share ideas. So I was, delighted to be invited, and we'll tell you whatever I can that may or may not be of help.
Oh, I'm sure you've got plenty of stories, plenty of wisdom for us there, as you would say. It's plenty of wisdom. But I can't believe how quick that time's gone. Like, it's gone like bang. The summer's now over. We're entering October in a week's time, which I can't believe. Do us a favor, David. We're going to get into all sorts, but I've done you a little intro, but I prefer you to give us a more specific overview. So who are you right now and what do you do for the listeners that don't know?
Okay, so David Morgan, one of the co-founders of Morgan Law. My business partner is Simon Law. We don't actually do legal recruitment, which we probably should, but we don't yet. And we set up in 2000 as a public sector and not-for-profit sector industry specialist, hiring sort of middle management to senior management functional specialists. So head of finance director, HR, IT, procurement, projects, project management, that sort of thing. So very much the functional side of
How many people are in the business?
sides. Pardon?
How big's the business now?
In terms of headcount, we are probably about 30, 35. We are probably running about 20, early 20s in the turnover. 20 million. We run a calendar year end, so we're coming up to the end of our third quarter.
Same. We started off the business in March, so we had like a March till March to the end of February, and it just didn't work for me. So we had a 9-month year in year 2, and then we went to calendar. It just doesn't make sense for me to be any time of the year. But some of my clients have like Q1 starting in November. I'm like,
well, what was interesting? So when we set up, so Simon and I left Michael Page in 2000. Obviously worked through our contracts, notice periods, etc. So we started the business, or the year started in October. So we had a September to October, October to September year end financial year. And I found that quite useful because we were planning the following calendar year in what is everybody else's quarter 4.
Yeah.
So we had sort of an extra 3 months to actually put the plans in place based on what our Q1 was, which everybody else's Q4 for the calendar year. So it did kind of work initially, but we just had to fall in line for reporting and everything else.
Well, one of our clients, I think it's Faden, they do November Q1 starts. So they're basically, Christmas is middle of Q1. And they do that on purpose so that, they believe that the rest of the industry will be slowing down while they're ramping up. Like who slows down in middle of Q1? Like,
sure.
So I think that's quite clever. I'm still not sure I'd want to do it.
No. It was, I think, the industry, I think everybody talks about how cyclical and seasonal the industry is. We've never really found that until, I think this year we've had a particularly slow summer. And I think a lot of people had holiday rolled over from the pandemic, carried over days. I think people had holidays booked in 2020 that they rebooked in 22. I think people were desperate to just get away. Seasonally, not normally affected. But I think this year has been a one-off, and it's been an eerie market, I think, with just everybody away. So keen to get back, obviously after the Queen's passing and the national mourning, and I think the cork's back out of the bottle with jobs and with candidates. So it's all looking good for Q4, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go back. So tell us, why did you even start the business? What was you're a recruiter with your mates in my well, what made you leave and do it?
I think all the way back, sort of growing up, older than you. So growing up in that sort of late 80s kind of, entrepreneur, young, business, small business owner, create your own destiny was drilled into me. My dad was an entrepreneur. He started his own business, and I think I'd always had in my mind I wanted to run my own business, and I think that made it difficult for me to fit into a corporate environment.
Yeah.
So I started my recruitment days started at Hayes, did a couple of years with them, and then did 4 or 5 years with Michael Page. And it was just too frustrating. It was just really frustrating. And I think, big corporates are perfect for a lot of people. But I think then and at the time, mid-20s, full of ambition and probably full of arrogance, was really willing and able to take the risk of leaving a very well-paid corporate job and starting up in a back bedroom with nothing but a Rolodex and a phone.
What was your dad? Your dad's business of interest?
Oh, look, he's in the car. He's in the car business. He's in the car game. He's he runs an auto electrical shop in Newcastle.
Right.
There's only 3 of them, but he took that risk back, like I said, back in the 80s, and has been a great move for him. He's 76, 77. He still goes to work.
Wow.
They're still in there.
Loves
Every
it.
Saturday morning they go in there and they'll have their bacon sandwiches and have a laugh. But he's still grafting because he loves it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that really was I think a product of the environment at the time.
Yeah. I didn't have that. You see, I didn't have any
Mm.
entrepreneurial guidance, or I didn't know anyone who had their own business. And I think if I'd have had that earlier, I think it might have had an impact on me earlier. I think I'd have been like a bit more. Once I got into the working world, I was like, imagine having your own business, but didn't really feel realistic for a while. I think I had to learn the skills of being a recruiter, and I was like, oh, this is possible. But yeah.
But a lot of people do have the idea of running something, or I could do this, or I could do that. But the execution of that, as we found out, is a lot more difficult. And I'm so pleased that we did it together, because we were able to separate. So he's a fantastic temp and interim operator, and I was always perm, retained, sort of semi-search, executive search. So we had complementing operational skills, but also complementing sort of organizational skills when it comes to setting something up. So it was like, look, can you sort this out? Can you do the bank account? And I'll do the telephones. If the actual basics of setting up.
What did you need to set up back then? Like, what was so obviously bank accounts are standard, but I'm thinking, what was the sort of kit and shit you needed back in 2000 and 2000?
So we leased a server from, I don't even know if they still exist, a company called Time Computers.
Right.
Plugged in a couple of PCs to it, stuck the CRM that we've still got today.
Wow.
That we coded, we created everything on it. It was actually an IT contractors, designed for IT contractors. So some of the terminology was a bit off, but we have really just bespoked within the limitations of a off-the-shelf CRM, and we still use it now. And that was based on our experience of big company, behemoth systems that just didn't work. A couple of phones. I bought my first mobile phone. I'd resisted up until 2000. And some business cards and a mate to do a website, and then an off-the-shelf free email address, which was morganlaw2000@aol.com. True. And Simon's dad's fax machine down the road.
Wow. So how did the faxing situation work back then?
Oh, we used to have to run backwards and forwards to get timesheets, and faxing CVs. We'd be.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, I've never used a fax machine in my life, right? How does it? How do you get a fax over to someone? What do you have to do?
So it's, if you imagine putting a document, half a dozen CVs into a scanner in a printer.
Yeah.
So you stick them in the top, you dial a phone number, and it'll slowly drag those pages through.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what wizardry happens at the other end, but then
it come out as an online document or as a paper doc?
No, it's a paper document.
Oh God.
So you used to have, fax machines used to have, they wouldn't have a cutting facility. So they'd just end up as an enormous, you can imagine sending 6 CVs and you just have an enormous, almost like a toilet roll of fax paper to sort of reel through.
Wow.
To see where it sort of begins and ends. Yeah, we used to do mail shots. We used to do paper mail shots. We used to stuff the post box at the end of his street. His postman used to go mad, and we used to hand stick every stamp onto the envelopes.
And what was it? CVs in it, or was it like just information brochure type stuff?
Yeah, whatever you do now on email, brochures, CVs, sample CVs, pen portraits, And there'd be 200 of these things. Literally, you couldn't fit another thing in the in the post box.
So how did you find the early days? Like, if you look back, like, what's your kind of memories like of it?
It was great. You know, it really was. So we were coming out of, so when I started in 94, 95 at Hayes, we still had paper CVs in a trolley filing cabinet. So
Wow.
you'd go through and you'd have your part qualified accountants coded pink, you'd have your financial accountants coded yellow, and you'd literally go through manually going through CVs. So you had to know your candidates, and you had to manage an optimal number of candidates. And we used to say, look, you only need to know 50 people and place half of them.
Yeah.
You know, you got 25 temps out. So we started in the days of literally paper, and then Hayes put their system in. Michael Page obviously already had a system in when we joined with them, but they were clunky, and old school recruitment consultants, and well, any recruitment consultant is often a difficult mind to change to something new. So you had all these sort of hybrid paper computer systems, and it was just crazy how inefficient I think that we were, but also super efficient at the same time. Given I think if you were good, you were super efficient. So we had, it was a great time. It was a great learning experience. It was sitting there putting together. Right, we need a website. Are we going to do this? How are we going to do it? How are we going to populate the database? What do we need? And we had literally a Rolodex, and we were ringing every local authority, pretending to be from BMW offering a free test drive to find out who the chief finance officer was, so we could speak to them. And just making notes on cards, so we could then transpose it onto and fill in the database.
Wow.
There was no such thing as a directory that you could buy and import into a database. There was no LinkedIn. There was nothing like that. But we said from the very beginning, look, because we just wanted to go. We'd been big billers, and we wanted to go. We said, right, we have to invest the first 3 months in getting the infrastructure right, resist the urge to get on the phone and do deals. Obviously, stuff comes through, or we'll deal with it. But we give it the first 3 months to really bed down the data and the information that we need, put together, like I said, putting in phone lines, getting fax machines, getting letterhead printed, deciding on logos, everything that you can very easily do now in less than 30 seconds on a free website. We had to manually do, meeting with people to decide on what we wanted compliment slips to look like. Nobody uses a compliment slip anymore. So that was really good. It was really exciting. Pardon?
What is that?
So it's
compliments on it.
Yeah, it's a small piece of paper that you put that has with compliments printed on, that when you send anything out, that you would include with your name and signature.
Right. So it's almost like a mini note.
Birthday card. Yeah.
Little note.
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, I've seen them on other things, but not in a work capacity. I think.
No, a fax header. You've got to have a corporate fax header so it looks professional. So loads of stuff. Really,
you didn't actually hit the phones for 3 months, really.
I mean, we were hitting the phones, doing sort of market research, just like I said, gathering data to put into the database, because we knew once we started, if we didn't have every hospital or the 33 local authorities fully mapped out, we would not do it. We would not get time to do it. So, we were, really disciplined about how we structured our day, which and structured the startup. And the first 3 months or so, 2 or 3 months, was very much about getting ready to go.
And then what was it like once you'd done that work and you were able to go?
It was great. I mean, we started, we're doing deals so fairly quickly. and slotted it back into the market quite easily. We arranged with a factoring company to pay the temp payroll, and we put together a business plan. And I remember presenting it to this guy from Lloyd's Black Horse, I think they were called, factoring company at the time. And we're sitting in this, is it 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom house downstairs in Simon's kitchen, talking to this bank manager. We presented him with a business plan that said we were going to do £1 million turnover in our first year, and we were absolutely convinced that we'd do £1 million. We worked it out. We had month 12 all the way back, reverse engineered it. This is what we need to do. This is how many temps we need to place. This is a contract fees we can expect, maybe some perm fees. We'll do £1 million turnover. This guy must have just thought we were joking. So anyway, we did it. So we did £1 million in our first year. Comes to the second year. So yeah, so 6 months at the second year. You said you're going to do 2 million this year. We'd just like to come and do an audit. So, oh yeah, fine, come on. We quite naive.
Bank this is.
Yeah, this is the factoring company. Right, so they come in and they said, all right, fine, do quick audit, have a look. Fine, no problem. Looking at all the invoices. They said, but we've never seen a business plan as accurate or as ambitious as that for year one that's actually been genuine. We thought you were laundering money. We thought it was too good to be true.
Yeah.
So, we got a good sort of forecasting business development type heads on our shoulders. We set sort of targets and we aim for them. And it's basically not changed since. It's from year from
what would have been the profit or the gross profit on that turnover in the first year?
Oh God. Probably a couple $100,000.
Yeah. And what did you bother hiring or try and hiring anyone, or did you just stick to the two of you for that 12?
So we hired somebody into finance, Simon's mother. I think what we did, so the first thing we did was we got some money behind us and then we rented an office.
Right.
So we moved into an office in Victoria.
Where were you working in the first year then?
Simon's spare bedroom.
Right.
It's £1 million out of a spare bedroom.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Where did he live?
In Croydon.
And where were you?
I was in Weybridge, so I would drive around the M25.
Yeah, because I've got a house in Crystal Palace near Croydon. Yeah. What? And where's Weybridge? I know the name, but I can't.
It's the M25 is a clock. It's 8 o'clock.
Okay.
In Surrey.
Yeah. So what would that be, about 40 minutes or something to get to?
Yeah.
To someone's house and then go work.
Literally a back bedroom that we painted ourselves. The sun used to come through in the afternoon, so we went to Croydon IKEA and bought the cheapest bamboo blind that we could find, and we still joke about it now. We couldn't find a hammer, so we used a shoe to hammer it into the window frame. And yeah, it was good times. What
was your life like at that point, at that age? Like, what was the setup outside of work that you took a risk on in your life?
Both married, with no kids,
right?
But homeowners. Or mortgage owners, anyway.
You bought your houses, yeah. That was a bit like me and my business partner. We bought our houses, and then you'd both got married, no kids, right? So you kind of, it's a good time to take that risk.
26,
20,
25, 26, 27.
Yeah, good age.
That stage, where when you're bulletproof, and you can do, you can take on the world, and you could do it. And it's. It was a great opportunity. It was fun times, but the difficult times as well that you have to deal with. And so once we got our office, we were in Victoria. Decided we could afford an office. We had enough sort of recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So we only put $5,000 in each to the business. So we've never borrowed any money.
No.
We haven't had to put anything in. We haven't taken outside investment.
Did you pay yourselves in that first year, like straight away, or did you wait for a period?
I think we had little bits, but it was almost like when we're profit, it's still the same now. When there's profit there and the cash flow and the business can afford it, then you'll take a bit out.
Yeah.
We are, there's a salary now, but I think that the importance of cash to the business was always the number one priority. So in terms of a steady growth, and you talk about visions and vision, that's something I don't think has really changed. We want to be masters of our own destiny, and that doesn't mean reporting to a bank or an external shareholder or any other third party that might want to interfere. So that's sort of really became part of our DNA from day one. And then so we quickly moved out of this office in Victoria that's since been knocked down.
Right.
It was damp. The wallpaper was peeling off, and it was awful, but it served its purpose. And then we moved into offices in Pall Mall, and then we really started, because it was more of a prestigious address. It was a nice office. It made it a lot easier to start hiring people, and then we started bringing people in from there.
Was the vision always to grow headcount? Because you'd obviously
you'd
worked in big teams, right? So you only knew that.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy not having to worry about that for a while, though, and go just be lean?
At the time, I didn't really think about it, because there's so many other things that are taking up your capacity. And I always knew that it was something that we do. So it wasn't something that, it was almost like we're on a route to get to that place. And we started making hires in the pub, as you do, along the way. And I guess from the early days, which still stands now, is that, we used to tell people, look, it's my name and it's his name on the business card. You have to be able to provide an offer and deliver a service that warrants what I would expect, or that I would deliver. So, finding people, they had to be good, but they had to buy in also to the business mentality.
How would you describe that?
I would describe that as but everybody says this, don't they? We provide a quality and honest service. We will go the extra mile. We'll do what we can to get under the skin of a client and find out exactly what the issues are, and what they are looking for. And I think certainly at that time, going that extra mile and being experienced enough but confident enough to communicate your experience and opinions, I think was a big differentiator for us at that time, and that's something that we still live by. So it's about experience, it's about trust, it's about loyalty, and that runs through experience, trust, and loyalty in our consultants, and also with our clients and with our candidates.
Demonstrating opinions is a good point, though, because I think that is something that, especially when people are early on in their career, they don't know if they can do it. Like they can often worry, and if you've not got that leader that's encouraging that, is it going to develop at the same pace? I was lucky enough that the person I worked for, she was very, strong with clients and candidates. She was really clear when she didn't want to represent them, or when she didn't agree with their strategy, she in a positive, polite, and constructive way, she'd be happy to say to a client no. And I remember watching the first few times, thinking, "Now you got some balls."
Well, it was drilled into me from my early days that, look, you're an equal partner. Yeah. Do not let a client talk down to you. Do not let them give you the runaround. You are an equal partner. You're a business partner to them for yours in your specialist area, which is hiring. And there's a great story. So the grad intake, it wasn't me, but it was a grad. It's gone out with his senior very senior consultant, one of first, second, third meeting that he's ever been on. And he's sat there, and this client's an absolute ball breaker. I want this, I do this, and really just tore into this very senior, very experienced consultant. She turns around, she says, "Let me stop you there." She turns to this grad who's literally probably been 3 months, turns to him, he goes, "Do we really want to work with this guy?" And he's like, "Well, yes, I think it's an exciting opportunity, and the business is going places, and I think it would be a great opportunity for us to be involved in a growing business." She said, "Okay." Turned back to the guy and said, "Right, we'll work together, but these are the terms." And was really blunt back and just cut him down from the knees, and that established the business relationship, which then evolved and developed into something of a partnership, a long-term partnership.
Often a friendship as well. I think if people, once that mutual respect is built, you can become more than just a business relationship, But I think if you're always a yes man or a yes woman and you do anything anyone ever says, and you don't think for yourself, it'll never work.
It's more difficult now with the way that the industry's changed to actually have that kind of one-to-one relationship. And we can come to what my views are in terms of how the industry's evolved, but I think it's a lot more transactional than it used to be.
Well, you're obviously the government, not-for-profit, etc. That, I imagine, has changed a lot with the frameworks and things.
Oh, yeah.
So back in the day, it would have been a lot more. So my first recruitment job in Australia was in the Victorian government, the Australian government. It was incredible. There was a framework. There was only 5 vendors that were on it. We were one. Randstad were, they won it. I think Hayes got kicked. No, Hayes were on it. Someone got kicked off and they got on it. Hudson, I think, or someone. And then when we got on there, it was genuinely about we'd signed the terms of business. We got given all these department names with no contacts, no information other than they've signed. They've got the rights to work with you if they want to.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. It was about meeting everyone face to face. And the government departments were all in 1 square mile pretty much. So I used to spend my day having coffees and beers and lunches and just building amazing relationships. What I didn't realize at the time was the commission was shocking. Well, there wasn't any at the beginning because the terms were so low. They kind of built it as I was leaving. But it was the best training ground I could have wished for. What was it like in the UK in those days, in the way that you operate?
So going all the way back, in the UK in 2000, there was no such thing as a MSP.
No.
There was no such thing as a vendor. It was a free-for-all, and your revenue depended on the relationships that you built with that line manager.
Yeah.
And how you leverage them into other departments within that organization. And then sort of slowly the master vendors started to come in, focused on local government at first, but still really a stronghold in local government, in councils. And at first we made a strategic decision that we wouldn't deal with them because the margins were so low.
I'm interrupting today's episode to mention our sponsor. Talent Ticker are here to help everyone who are in such a candidate short market, right? So if you're looking to grow your recruitment business in 2022, candidates are important, and Talent Ticker are here to help. What they do is they help recruiters work smart and not hard. They've got over 300 agency clients, recruitment agency businesses that use Talent Ticker, and that helps them connect to the right person at the right time for the right reason. Okay. It also automates a lot of monotonous tasks we use and provides simple tools to identify ideal and off-the-grid candidates, people that are under the radar for open roles. So if you like the sound of finding more deeper level talent that's not exclusively on LinkedIn, for example, then get over to www.get.talentticker.ai/Hoxo. You'll find the link in the episode and go and take advantage of the special offer they've got on there for our listeners.
When was this turning point? What year would you say?
Mid-2000s.
Right. So 5 years into the business or something.
Yeah. And we were providing a very, very good service. We're providing the best people. And
How big was your business at that point?
we turnover wise, we're probably touching 15 million. Probably half a dozen consultants.
So yeah, I'm interested to see. Let's say you're 6, 7 of you, including. I imagine you're still on the tools at that point. Well, and you've built this team with this mindset. This is because that's how you do it. You take what you know, you replicate. This is how we operate. We deal with hiring managers. We build relationships first. It's not just you and your business partner at that point when things change. You've got to think, right, well, like you say, we took a strategic decision not to engage with an MSP. Did you believe they were kind of a phase, perhaps? Something that might come and go.
Yeah. Or we believed that our relationships were strong enough that there'd be a workaround.
Yeah.
Now, what became clear was that workaround was, yes, you could use your relationships, and yes, you will get first call on things, and yes, people will come to you when they're moving on assignments, etc., and you run through the same process as you used to. You just then have to sign up to the MSP to process the payment.
Going from and to. Remember?
I mean, we'd have a target margin of 25%. We were obviously we were flexible on that, and I think so. The margins shifted overnight from 25 to about 13, 14.
Wow.
And they've gone down since then. So yeah, we would carry on doing our business. Our success is based on the time and the effort and the relationships and the experience and the trust that we've built up over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
To be able to fill that job quickly, it's then priced by a processing system and valued by a processing system.
How did you get on when you refused to initially use it?
Well, we invoked our terms and conditions on more than one occasion for transfer.
Right.
I won't go into who, but we settled on literally on the at the front door of the courthouse with a client for about 8 or 9 temp to perm fees.
Yeah.
That because we hadn't signed up to an agreement, they just, in our view, stolen our contractors and moved them across to other agencies.
Wow.
So yeah, we got, we did have tussles with them along the way.
But did it actually have a decline you see a decline in performance and revenue and everything?
I think the volumes were there, and we weren't. Our market spread or our industry spread has always been something that we said, look, you deal with housing, you deal with local government, you deal with central government, you deal with NHS. Every consultant isn't in a vertical sector, so they have a spread of clients, and the vendors were typically local government, so we just shifted our focus to different industries. So revenue wise, it wasn't so much of an effect.
Yeah. So
and then we were flying through the 2000s. Incredibly, in 5 years in, 2006, I think it was, we won the Accountancy Age Award for Recruiter of the Year. Now, Accountancy Age, for older listeners, was probably one of the premier accounting and finance industry weekly publications, and it was a reader voted poll.
Right.
And we're up against Robert Half, Michael Page, and Hayes, and Reed, and us. It was insane. We go to the awards, and we only bloody win it. So it was justification that we were doing the right thing. We were disrupting. We call it disrupting now the traditional model of how big recruitment works. We built on the back of that. You're touching Fast Track, you're touching Sunday Times Profit Track, various awards, various sort of magazine pieces, sort of top 100 here, top 50 there. I think we've been in the Recruiter magazine's top 100 every year, Hot 100 every year, in the Fast 50. So yeah, we were flying through the 2000s, through the noughties. And then our recession started when the coalition government came in. So everything went crazy in 2008, 2009, and there was a lot of consultants in financial services, in industry, being laid off.
Yeah.
We started hoovering them up.
I bet you must have been.
Yeah.
Because the government would have been stable at that point.
So the government spending was regular. So that's really when we started hiring and bringing in people who didn't have industry experience but had function experience. So if you've been recruiting accountants in retail, then yeah, we'll give you a go.
Yeah.
So really pushed through the end of the noughties, and like I said, until the coalition, the age of austerity started, when Conservative Liberal Party came in and decided to address the issues of the credit crunch in public spending. So yeah, it was a crazy decade.
Did you carry on recruiting through that decade, or did you? What point did you perhaps come off the tools?
I've always been involved. I've always been operationally involved. Until COVID, I've always been on the desks managing a team.
Right.
So not directly recruiting, but helping, half a dozen in the HR team recruit, and, focusing on them and dealing with, being there as a sounding board to deal with issues, or give an opinion on things, or, spot people who might be having problems or an issue, and being able to mentor them or help them through that. So always functionally involved, operationally involved. Like I said, up until COVID, when we've had a slight reorganization in terms of what we needed to do. So yeah, that was 20 years. So pushed through there. And then, so the headwinds of austerity slowed us down. We lost people, we lost consultants then. Mainly, not really of our choice, but there was an exodus of people to Asia and Australia.
Right. How many people were you at the peak at that point?
Probably, let's say 45, 50.
Yeah.
And it was just so tough. And there was nothing really in industry in the UK to confidently have a run at. So yeah, lots of people to Singapore, to Australia, a couple to Australia, Hong Kong. That's where it seemed to be the markets.
What I'm interested in is your mindset at that point. So a couple of things. So you, like you say, you're 10 years in or so.
Yeah.
How did your life? You're now late 30s, so I'm 36 now. You're kind of my age. How was your life? How would your life change? Did you have kids at that point? And
yeah, so kids were there. Kids were on the way. Personally, I mean, it was very, very challenging. We lost, in the space of 6 months, our turnover halved, and that was a scary time.
I bet, because you kind of get used to it, don't you? Like you got used to the performance growth over the 10 years.
We just had, bad news after bad news after bad news. And so personally, what happened for me in terms of how I cope with it, it is like being in the middle of a whirlpool, just being spun around and you don't know what's coming. The worst thing that you can do, or the worst thing that I could do, was to either celebrate a small win with a drink, or commiserate my small losses or a loss with a drink.
Hmm.
So I stopped drinking because it was getting to the point where, you know, all right, that's great news. Let's go to the pub. Oh shit, that's bad news. Let's go to the pub. So that gave me a clarity and a focus, I think, just to be able to manage the spinning plates, to be able to, you know, wake up not feeling groggy and be able to think, right, with clarity, I can handle this problem and I can deal with it.
Yeah.
So my reaction to that was to stop drinking, to get focused, and then, you know, really understand but not worry so much, or not worry as much, that things were not controllable, and bring things back into my control.
How did your business partner respond, and then what was the relationship like over that 10-year period?
So yeah, I mean, we were partners in crime, you know. We were cut from the same cloth, you know. That's why we started up. We were best friends, you know. We started pushing through. You know, I think I didn't exactly, you know, completely distance myself from the pub. I'd just go out and I just wouldn't drink. I'd just have a, you know, Diet Coke, or, you know, lemonade or a Red Bull or whatever. But what wasn't happening was, you know, it wasn't the crazy 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. It was a, you know, rather sedate 9:30 train home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, you know, that did change the business, and certainly the relationship between me and him. But I think if we look back at it, I think it was necessary. Certainly from my perspective, it was necessary to do it. And it gave me like I said, an opportunity to be able to think that I can handle things and I can control what seems to be uncontrollable right now.
Wow. And how did your family respond to that?
So, well, we got through austerity, so business wise, and then we recovered really, really well and quite quickly. So we got back up to about 40 million turnover by 15, 16, something like that. And that, so seeing the fruits of the you know, the focus and the control and the business and things coming back, the market coming back and being successful again, and being sober, put a spotlight on my marriage.
Yeah.
And I quickly came to realize that all of the issues that I thought were our issues because I was pissed, actually being sober, those issues didn't go away. So that's, you know, I ended up starting to get divorced in
Right.
the mid teens, in that sort of 15, 16 area. And I just had a real rethink in terms of what my life was and what I wanted it to be. And, you know, you get to that 40 and you think, well, if this is midlife, if I'm half time,
Yeah.
what do I want my second half of my life to be? And I made some, you know, pretty big decisions during that time.
Yeah. And how many kids did you have at that point?
3.
At what ages?
Early teens girls and a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah. So it's a huge, huge decision, isn't it? Because even if a lot of people stay together for kids, like they just kind of go, we'll wait till they're 18 and then we'll make a decision. And it's just
I couldn't stay in that relationship, as toxic as it was, and raise 2 teenage girls, showing them that is what a normal mummy and daddy relationship was.
Yeah.
That it got to that point where I just thought they cannot think that this is normal. They cannot think that this is conditioned, that there's screaming arguments every 5 minutes and doors slamming and things being thrown. It just can't. That cannot be the imprint that I give to my girls. So yeah, that started it started reasonably, but it ended very unreasonably.
Well, I bet, because
5 years later.
So it took 5 years to get divorced.
Yeah.
Obviously, financially and commitments to the business and things, it's a lot to untangle, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, she came, I want half of everything, including your half of the business. So, you know, immediately it's okay, let's work this out. So where we were at business wise was 15, 16 with 3.5 million EBIT.
Yeah.
No debt. Things are looking good. We've got a great business. Everything's going ahead. Everything's going to go forward. And then, as you're probably aware from your chats with Chris at Timothy James, so the various external factors, master vendors came in, they started the race to the bottom in margins. Okay, fine. The NHS put rate caps in terms of what we could charge a hospital based on a multiplier, 1.5 multiplier of the base salary, the base permanent salary of that position. Now, you don't have to be a maths genius to work out that the base salary plus holiday pay plus employers' national insurance plus pension contributions plus apprenticeship levy, that doesn't leave an awful lot for the agent at the end, and really restricted on that. Chuck into that a GDPR headache to deal with, and drop Brexit on there. How about that? So it's almost like every year there was a new challenge to face and to deal with. That each time was sort of holding the business back. Come out of Brexit, and then we get a pandemic, and so the last 7 years have been really, really challenging.
Yeah.
In our sector. So what I guess what so when you're getting divorced and your ex-wife's looking at EBIT of 3.5 million, and then you're looking at a business that's had 5 years of challenges into it, and it's not worth what she thought it was, and thinks you're lying about what it's worth. It becomes a very long and drawn out and expensive legal experience.
I bet. And how do you? I can see the clarity from the drop in alcohol back in the time where the first challenges hit. How did you cope with this one? Because did you bring the alcohol back, or did you keep it away?
No, I fell off the wagon for a bit. I mean, it wasn't. I certainly wasn't dependent on alcohol. I just enjoyed it a bit too much.
Yeah.
And it would get to a point where I just didn't really like the person that I was when I was pissed. And I'd end up apologizing for things that I'd said, and really regretting stuff that I didn't mean. I just said it because I thought it would be controversial, or so went back. I went back to drinking, socializing, getting myself out and about, but with a view that I knew where a limit was, and I didn't really want to pass that limit. And then met my wife. We got married 4 years ago. We got a daughter, 2-year-old, nearly 3. And personally, I'm in such a happy place. That decision, the stick or twist decision, age 40, has worked out. That's really worked out for me. So, from an emotional, personal, and mental health perspective, in a much, much better place. And I think that helps you, that grounds you in business as well.
Oh man,
I think if you don't have that, or if you don't seek that, then it affects, and it can very negatively affect how you run your business.
I literally had this, I got married in 2019, but the wedding was already fucked. Like, when we got married, she'd called it off a month before. We ended up getting married because her family were traveling from across the world, and it was this big fake show. I had 350 guests at a wedding, and I knew it was doomed. Like, I knew it was. And then we split up on and off for the next year, but I couldn't get divorced for 12 months. So I literally left a year to the day of getting married. So it was June 2020 in the pandemic. So, I had to wait to get my negative test results to be able to go home to see my family and leave London, which was mental. And I just remember thinking, what, like, my business had gone through in that 3-month period, of the pandemic hit, it was quite similar. I dropped alcohol. I literally did this 75-day challenge where I trained twice, ate a healthy diet, didn't drink.
75 hard.
Yeah, I did that at the start of in the pandemic. So
Finish it.
March 30th to June 13th, I did it.
Did you finish it?
Yeah, I finished it. Yeah.
Oh, well done, mate.
I had a blood clot in my back from all the exercise. I thought I had cancer at one point. I still did it. It was mad. I had this big lump pop up, and the doctors were like, "We think it could be a tumor, it could be a blood clot." And I'm like, "Well, the good thing about 75 hard is it makes you take a photo every day."
Yeah.
And my ex used to take a picture of me front, side, and back, right?
Yeah.
So I've got this lump in my back that wasn't there 2 days before because I've got the picture.
Bloody
So
hell.
the doctors are like, "We think it could be a sarcoma, which is a cancerous tumor." And I'm like, the only bit of peace of mind I had was cancer doesn't grow that fast. And I'm like, it's got to be. Anyway, it turned out to be a blood clot. But when we got through that, and she didn't really support me. She was not that interested. It literally, the clarity from the lack of alcohol, I knew, like, I kind of thought going into COVID, this might save us because we spent time together and shit. But I knew by the year anniversary, I just kind of got my life back after thinking I could be ill. And I'd not drank. I felt great. I was like, I'm off.
Yeah.
And I literally went to Spain I went to Ibiza for the summer, and I cleared my head. And then it was only a few months later, I met I'm getting married next month. And it's a similar story, right? I dated her years ago. We got back in touch, and it's just been amazing. But it's crazy. Like, the business and your personal life are so entwined. You don't even realize, like, because I was leading up to the wedding, I was drinking 3-4 nights a week, knowing there's problems at home, not telling anyone, and going, does anyone fancy another drink? Or don't anyone fancy, like, there might be a Champions League game on or whatever. I was gravitating to anything to not have to go home.
No, it's an excuse to, or it's a much more attractive place to be, isn't it? The pub.
Yeah.
If things aren't good at home. For
sure. And it was like, everything changed. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing now is, I don't know about you, but like, because I think I've done about 15, 16 months of alcohol free since I started this journey. In 2015, I started taking months off, and then I had this period of, I think I did about 6 months around the time of the divorce. And then, but now I've gone back to being more of a social, but it's finding that balance now. I think that I'm better at, but I kind of beat myself up because I know what my brain is like when I don't drink.
Yeah.
I'm like, even the smallest hangover, I kind of think to myself, well, was it worth it? Like, do you ever get like that?
It depends. Yeah. I mean, I used to say, and it's not even a joke. It's like 1 pint, it was too many, but 10 wasn't enough.
Wow.
So 1 pint would tip you over the edge and you'd be 10, 12 pints in, and then you'd be full, and then you'd hit the Jack Daniels because you couldn't fit any more alcohol in you. So it depends very much on I think, this isn't a mental health thing, but I think it depends on what your attitude is or your susceptibility to excess, and possibly addiction. I don't know enough about addiction, but your susceptibility to excess and how strong your self-control and willpower is.
See, I'm not like that. I'm a more 4 or 5 pints of beer done, but I'll still feel it the next day.
I'd end up in a rave in my suit, and they'd all think I was the police. It would be in some illegal rave somewhere. It would be crazy times. That's what you've got to cut. You've got to cut that out. But then you got into sport? Because I changed it doesn't look like it now, but I started cycling.
Yeah.
And I channeled all of my energies into, or my let's say, lack of self-control would be 3-4 hours out on the bike, which also interestingly was 3 or 4 hours away from the toxic home environment.
Yeah.
So I kind of replaced that with riding around the Surrey Hills.
And more positive vibes.
A lot more positive. Lost a ton of weight. And I've never really been able to meditate. I've never really tried to meditate, but it is like a meditation when you're out riding. And that was really useful for me. And that helped me sort of just get clarity in terms of, a self-evaluation, self-development.
So how's the last few years been then? Again, we don't want to go into too much. We're actually at an hour point already.
Oh God, are we? Right.
Carry on. I've got some time. So
You can edit me out.
no, don't be that. But tell us. So obviously you've gone through divorce.
Yeah.
We've gone through COVID, but like you said, your roles changed. So how have you evolved in the business as your life got better?
So what we've got, in a nutshell, is we've got some very, very experienced, long-standing senior team members in the business. So the average tenure at Morgan Law of our directors is 15 years.
Wow.
Which I think is unheard of across the industry. Our average tenure, including, half a dozen new starters that have just come in, average tenure at Morgan Law is 11 years.
That's crazy.
So, we've got a strong core team, very experienced, everybody needs guidance and everybody needs guiding through things. Like I said, nobody knows what the rate caps are. What does that mean? What does Brexit mean for us? What are clients saying? How are we going to deal with the pandemic? What's furlough? All these different things that have been sort of thrown at us for the last 4 or 5 years in our market. What I haven't had to worry about is the experience of the consultants and their abilities to do the job. What I needed to do is be able to take a macro view of what's happening in the world, what's happening in the industry, and also what's happening generationally. Because I think that's often overlooked. Millennials are now. You're a millennial. You're probably 30. You're 35. You're a millennial.
Yeah.
My Generation X, we're on our way out. And it's being able to understand what the technology changes are, what the communication changes are, how people work, what people expect. What does Gen Y want? What do millennials want? What does Gen Z want? Gen Z. So I found myself sort of getting more involved on a macro level. So what I've got is a very strong MD who took the operational side. I've got Simon who loves the operational stuff and is running. Between the two of them, they can run the teams.
Yeah.
And that's freed me up to be a little bit more kind of say strategic, maybe visionary, maybe aware of industry changes, of generational changes, technology changes, and things like that. So I've stepped into, looking at marketing, looking at what technology can actually do beyond shoving a CV in a fax. What is possible out there? What are we doing? How are we marketing? How are we presenting? What's our brand message? What sort of thought leadership are we doing? How are we engaging with people? What's our candidate experience like? What's our client experience like? And really, it's been a really valuable journey for me to be able to step back, but actually analyze this business and be critical in places as well to make suggestions and improvements on how we're positioned and what our message actually is, and how we can operate in this. Like I said, recruitment the last 5 years has been like a video game where you've got to beat the boss on that level, and then you get thrown into a new level that's tougher, and you've got to get through that level to beat that boss.
Yeah.
And that's where that literally every year has been that for the last 4 or 5 years.
No, I agree. I think it's great that you've made those changes.
You can't. Otherwise, you've seen it. There's a lot of businesses. Some of the businesses you mentioned in Australia, we've seen a lot that just don't exist anymore. They've been swallowed up, or what happened to the dreams, the visions, the objectives, the strategy of those founders back then. That's all. They've been swallowed up, or they disappeared, or they've gone. So to be able to move and adapt, I think you do need to have, looking at the sort of stuff that you do at Hoxo, is embrace it and don't resist it, and really just stick to what you're good at, but present it and communicate it in the new world.
That's what I do, right? That's what I'm always saying to people. It's like, I don't change or I don't want to change or try and change the basics of what recruiters do. I love it. I think it's the simplicity of it is actually what's best about the industry. Yeah. It's the communication that changes. Like, if you're still picking up the phone only and sending emails, you're an idiot in 2022. When you've got a LinkedIn profile that you're paying 10 grand a year for recruiter licenses, you've probably got 5 to 10,000 connections, and you don't communicate a message to them daily or bi-daily. Like, you're just missing out because other people are doing everything you're doing, and they're just adding that layer. And it's it's bonkers, really. But
There's so many platforms. There's so many platforms to be visible that getting attention is more difficult.
Yeah.
But if you're not using them, if you're not visible, you are invisible. If you're invisible, you do not exist.
Exactly. You become irrelevant.
Yeah.
And there's a period of time where people will still work in a black book, but it is going to run out. Like you say, with the generational movement, it will go. So it's like you can either hold on to the current way, your old way of working till you're done, or you can try and embrace it. And I think that's what.
Yeah, and that works. And we've seen a lot of people using basically LinkedIn as a black book, and it doesn't take. You could very quickly look at the numbers in terms of the numbers of employees in recruitment versus the number of recruitment companies. The average is about 3 or 4 headcount per recruitment company listed. Black book stuff, that's great, but you're not going to scale it.
No.
You can't scale a black book. You need to be able to utilize and use the tools that are there that have come around in the last 20 years for your advantage, to your advantage, and be able to leverage them to scale your business.
2 things left I want to cover, but I mean, spot on. First thing is, what are you seeing right now? So we talked about it at the very beginning, like this. We everyone's predicting recession and downturns. What honestly, what's been going on in your business over the last month or 2, and what do you see?
Look, let's just say it's going to be choppy. I think the economy is going to be choppy. I think we will see what the effect, the long tail effect of the emergency budget last week is. We will wait to see on how that pans out. I think interest rates are going to 6%. I think that's a certain.
Yeah,
I think that's guaranteed. Now, what are the effects of interest rates at 6%? What are the effects of the cost of living crisis? What's going to happen with the geopolitical situation? There are a lot of factors, I think, over the next 12 months that say it's going to be choppy, and expect choppy waters. I think the candidate crisis is coming to an end. I'm seeing a lot more activity. I've seen a lot more activity in the summer months than I have for the first half of the year in terms of people looking at jobs. I think people are starting to look at things. I think that'll be driven by the fact that to actually pay the gas bill and fill your car up and buy Christmas presents, you're going to have to earn more money, and working hard may or may not result in a little bit more money, but realistically, it's going to be moving jobs.
Do you also think that there's an element of loyalty to some employers in COVID that will run out? So almost like if someone protected you for that period, you're going to feel it. You've looked after them, but then after a year or 2 of it ending, it might just feel a little bit like it's okay to go now.
Possibly. I think the people that felt the loyalty have probably felt loyalty from their employer prior to the pandemic. I don't think you became a loyal employer just because there was a virus running around the world. I think there's probably more people who were dissatisfied with the way that they were dealt with, managed, and handled during the pandemic that will be the floodgates that open. I think habitually the candidate crisis is caused obviously by the massive spike in backed up jobs. For the 2020, it fell off a cliff. Right now, the ONS numbers are probably double what they've ever been in terms of advertised vacancies. That's balancing out. That's coming back down. So I think what I just said to my guys is that we're looking at very much a more normal market.
Yeah.
Where candidates are coming up, job numbers are going to come down. So it's going to be about being as 360 as you can, making sure that you're keeping on top of relationships, staying in touch with people, and having a having a good portfolio of contacts that that know that you are there and able to help them, because I think there is the balance is returning.
So how do you? There's a question I've asked on every show so far, I think, this season. How do you manage expectation in your team then? So let's say you've had someone who's done, I don't know, 50% more than they normally do based on market conditions.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, right? They get used to comms, you get used to the revenue, brilliant. But what happens when the market normalizes? Do you expect the same from someone? Do you drop your expectation based on market? But then how does that impact their feeling around themselves? Like there's a big project.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that question, and that's not a wishy-washy way of answering it. I think you've got very good, very experienced consultants who have benefited from the wave, the first half of the wave, but I think that's probably just got them back to where they should be or what they're capable of. And I think in a balanced market, they're still capable of that. I think, if somebody has or is overperforming or has overperformed in my eyes, in terms of what their ability is, then you just have to support them. You have to encourage them, and you have to refocus people. I think habitually we're very quick to get into a habit or an expectation, and you've seen this a lot. There's been a lot of overhiring in recruitment. There's been a lot of overhiring in tech. I'm seeing a lot of internal recruiters on LinkedIn that have just been made redundant or are looking for a job and things like this. So, there are some signs that overhiring is balancing out. But we didn't do that. Again, we stick to our message. We stick to, are you good enough? Do you believe in our values? Can you represent us? Yes, you can. Then you're good enough. Then you will be fine. And it's making sure that people are, I guess, just focused and reset their way of working, their operations, their goals, their objectives, whether that's a monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, yearly objectives. So I don't really see. I see that the people that are overbilling previous years are back to where they should be. I think anybody who's made that jump up, it's about keeping them there and giving them the tools and giving them mentorship and giving them the advice to make sure they stay there.
Makes sense. And final question for you is what is the future looking like? Like, what do you now see as your vision now that you're, 20 years or so in as a business owner? What's next?
I mean, I've been thinking about this. Your vision's only good as your visibility, and nobody in January 2020 had visibility of a year and a half pandemic. We were coming out of Brexit. We were back to pre-Brexit numbers January 2020.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a good few months. I think February.
End of 19, back January 20. We were flying. I did my big Wolf of Wall Street speech. This is it. New decade. Brexit's over. We're going to have it. Let's really go out there and achieve our potential. Yeah. And then March 17th or whatever it was happened. And it was like, okay, right. What do we do now? So vision wise is right. Of the vision, our leadership horsepower is on the next 12 months, is focusing on the people that we've got, making sure that, they're looked after, they're happy, they're working, they're making money, they're motivated. That's where the majority of our horsepower is going right now. I think once we come through this, the next 12 months, I think from a 3 to 5 year plan, there could be an exit. We've talked, we've had half an eye on the market from day one. We've had conversations with people, and if we could find somebody that does align with our vision, and we think, it's a very sort of personal decision, I think, to sell a business that you've built from nothing, and it would have to go to the right hands. And I think realistically, the right hands are the people that know the DNA of the management. So, I think there may be an event in 3 or 5 years' time where we try and facilitate a management buyout, but right. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, David, I just want to say thank you. I've loved this episode. It's been,
Great.
we've gone over a longer period of time. We've dug into really some personal and some
Yeah.
really interesting challenges. I think so many people will resonate with you, both, like I say, professionally and personally. I think if anyone does want to reach out to you and ask any questions, whether it be because they've resonated with something or, they see something similar in their own life, are you okay with that?
Absolutely delighted. I mean, again, something that I learned, and I know we're probably overrunning here, but something I learned through COVID was I did a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-development, and a lot of sort of inward thinking. And one of the things I thought of, right, there's half a dozen guys that have left me. They've started up their own business. They're 2, 3, 4, 5 consultants, whatever it may be. They don't know what furlough is. They don't have the advice. They don't have the great hair that I have. And I reached out to them on LinkedIn and said, look, if you want me, I'm here for a chat. And I hadn't spoken to some of them for 5, 6 years. And I said, look, if you want to pick my brains on anything, I'm here. And I'd extend that to anybody. LinkedIn, obviously, or email me, David Morgan at morgan-law.com. That's probably going to be the quicker response than LinkedIn. But either way, reach out and I'd be happy to speak to anyone.
It's all David Morgan, one word, at
morgan-law.com.
Okay, I'll get that added to the show notes and everything that goes out. So, David, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'd love to get you back on in a couple of years and see how things have evolved and where you are against those plans, and just to see, what's happened in your life, because I think there's.
Sean, I'd be delighted. I'm an avid fan of the podcast, so keep doing what you're doing, and like I said, it benefits me listening to people as well. So it's not a one-way street. If I can help anybody along the way, I will, and I think that's my duty to do that. So keep doing what you're doing. I'd be happy to speak to you anytime.
Legend. Cheers, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. I'll see you soon.